Hello everybody and welcome back to another book review with your boy HSR. This is the series where I got inspired by a meme to read 60 books this year because it told me that CEOs do that on average, and I said, screw that. If CEOs can do that, I can go ahead and do that too. So I started buying books, and in kind of the order I'm reading them, I am going out of my way here to review them. Not going out of my way, that was a poor choice of words. I actually really like talking, so I'm out here just expressing my thoughts on each of these books. I've taken some notes. It's a little bit freeform. The goal is for me to express to give you my biggest impressions of this book, summarize it a little bit, and let you know if I think you should read it and what kind of person I think should read it if it's a relevant topic. So today, without further ado, we are going to talk about The End of Power by Moises Naim. I am so sorry if Moises Naim, I don't know if I said that right. I probably said it real wrong, and I'm super sorry about that. So this book came out March 15th, 2013, and all things considered, this may be the newest book I've read. The End of Power is written by, like I said, Moises Naim, and this guy was the Venezuelan Minister of Trade and Industry at some point back in, I think 89, 90, and since then has been kind of more of a political journalist commentator type. And I thought that was really interesting. I didn't even realize that until I had bought the book. So I bought the book because it looked like an interesting subject matter. It seemed to be describing power in the current spectrum of the world, and it was kind of selling the point that it's decaying and it's changing and it's not what it used to be. And I find power to be one of the most interesting constructs we as humans have put together. So it's a topic that I feel is almost always worth discussing. So basically, this book describes kind of what power is. It goes out of its way to define it, to kind of explain it in a sense that power is when you can get people to do things that you want them to do, almost whether or not they want to do it. In a basic sense, he describes this all way better than I do. He kind of describes how power as we understand it is changing. He's basically taking it from the perception of what we as the plebs of the universe kind of perceive power as. So we think of those smoky rooms and cigars where an elite group of folk sit there and plot out the universe and all of our whatevers and, absolute control and things like that. And he's kind of making the case that let's pretend that there is no Illuminati thing for the sake of this conversation. Let's just go at the fact that politicians, people in power, CEOs, all the people who once almost had that absolute control, who really could do whatever they wanted, are no longer able to execute that absolute control with the same degree of freedom that once existed. So power, as we've seen documented in history, doesn't manifest in the same way or exist with the same level of absolute that it once did. So he goes on to point out that power, he even goes on as far as to say that power is something that we can't even really talk about in a conventional way since it's such a undefinable, almost imaginary concept. So how do you describe it? How do you qualify who has more power than who? It's a very loose thing if you really think about it. But he's kind of pointed out that by various modern revolutions such as information sharing or the fact that we're all mobile or combinations of these, and an example of this would be kind of like how guerrilla forces can organize in small numbers and spread out and do serious damage to major forces where, let's say, even 200-300 years ago, without the power of technology, it would have been impossible. In most cases, big force would have won. But as time's gone on, little force seems to be able to win more and more often, with big force kind of losing the threshold of, and that's just almost a visual representation of how power has changed. So that means that tyrant dictator is no longer able to keep the threshold on the country because maybe guerrillas are going to pop up and change some shit up, or the amount of new nations that exist in the world today compared to, let's say, the colonial era, or there's plenty of ways to look at it, and he kind of goes into way better detail than I do. It it kind of ends and goes on in detail. Like he goes in every angle possible, and it ends just kind of describing how power still exists, but it won't be the same anymore. Like CEOs no longer last as long as they used to, or pick away. It's almost like power that once was this coveted thing because of the absolute, like, I guess you could say, ratio between going through the ratio between what you get out of it versus the, I guess, the risk reward ratio. Now it's like the risk of power is so high. I mean, all it takes is for one social media scandal and you're toppled. Look at like a Harvey Weinstein character. He once had power, but because of the way all these various revolutions of the mind, let's say, have taken place, we are able to topple these giants that were once viewed as completely undefeatable in a sense. So the book kind of like puts you on that line of thinking. Now, on the real, it's a little bit of the tiny words kind of. It's a lot of little words. It takes a little bit to read this book. It was actually one of the ones that slowed me down for a minute because it took a little longer to read, and it might seem a little daunting, but the information in there is fucking fantastic. Like you will just start to see things in a wiser way. Like, I don't know. I'd say that if you're curious about what it's really like to be in charge these days, or how powerless, or how a person with such quote unquote power can actually come off to be so powerless and held so accountable by so many people that they're crippled and stuff, it's a good context setter. It's really worth reading, especially with figures like Trump in charge, to understand the limitations that may exist for these types of folk. That's about it on this one. I recommend this to you. I think you should read it. There'll be a link to the Amazon Canada page below, and you can flip that into your country and cop that book. I highly recommend you doing that. Pick it up wherever. It is so cool. It is so worth reading. So yeah, like this video if you liked it. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content. We do a lot of music reviews and stuff. We just finished our grind to 1,000 subscribers contest, so if you do comment, subscribe, and like, you'll enter into a future contest where you can win some Amazon gift cards and shit. And if you want to check it out, we started a Patreon recently, so check that out at patreon.com/behindthatsuit. Thank you all for watching. You're incredible. Without you, this wouldn't even be a possible thing, and y'all are the freaking greatest. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.